Hi, we're just loading now. I don't know if you can see, so I'm recording and we're just going live on Facebook. So we should be live now, and I'll make my screen big and I'm going to go on mute.
Tēnā tātou te whānau. Koutou e kaha nei ki te kuhu mai ki tēnei o tātou kaupapa. Mā taki mai, whakarongo mai, nau mai, haere mai. Haere mai ki tēnei wāhi whakawhiti kōrero, whiti whakaaro hoki. Kia ora koutou. Kia ora koutou I o koutou kāinga mahana, a koutou kāinga āhuru, mo tēnei tuāhuatanga o te mate korona. Nō reira, tēnā koutou whakapiripiri mai. Nō reira, he karakia, he honore, he kororia ki te atua, he maunga rongo ki te whenua, he whakaaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa, haumi e hui e, pai ki e. Nō reira, ka tukuna atu te rākau ki tērā o tātou tuakana Jared, kei a koe a te rākau e hoa.
Pai tēnā koe e taku tuakana e pine, kua whakatūwhera I tēnei wāhi, kia whakatakoto nā kōrero nā rere, ka nui ngā mihi kia koe e hoa. Kia ora whānau, just before we do our introductions, our little mihi, I've been given the honour to open, and I've got a kind of like a meditative guided kind of kōrero that just speaks about what a abundant Māori food system might look like. So it's a bit of an envisioning activity, and yeah, I just invite you to, if you want, you could close your eyes, take some deep breaths, and really just hone in on the present moment. And whakarongo mai ki ngā kupu e whai ake nei. Nā reira, whakaarohia tēnei. Imagine it is the peak of summer. You are on your papa kāinga in the company of your extended whānau, and everyone has come together to hākari. The sun beaming down with a light wind rolling from the hills. A breeze that cuts the edge of the hot day. Looking at the spread in front of you, knowing that every morsel before you was foraged, grown and raised by the hands of your whānau from the land upon which your whakapapa descends. As you prepare to eat, a karakia sounds, pressing the kai and offering sentiments of gratitude for this day, for this food, and for the whenua that produced it. Laid out in front of you is juicy watermelon, Māori potatoes, kumara, lush salad greens, wild pork and fat home-killed mutton fresh out the hangi, sweet corn and avocado, watercress, plums and peaches. all grown organically by the hands of your whānau and the forces of nature. Before the karakia is over, your gaze moves to the surrounding whenua, where a stand of ripe peach and plum trees offers respite from the hot sun. Beyond the orchard, you see the Mara, grandly spreading its foliage across the land. Riwai, kumara, melons, corn, tomatoes, and squash line the rows. A food forest sits between the marae and the Mara, a densely planted assortment of native and non-native trees, planted in companion with low shrubs, rongo Māori, and a diverse and abundant range of fruit growing amongst the chaos. As the karakia closes, huye taikie, you feel an overwhelming sense of belonging and connection to this place, to the people, and to the food you are about to consume. Imagine that. Imagine how proud your tipuna would be to see such a spectacle amongst the dysfunction of the modern world. And imagine how good it would feel knowing that your tamariki and your mukupuna are being nourished in this way. Mauri ora.
Mauri ora e hoa.
Mauri ora e Jared. Ka maute wehi e hoa. Tēnā te whakatau i a tātou ki tēnei o tātou kaupapa. What a way to start our panel, whānau, with a whakatau a Jared for us today. I'd like to take this time to me atu to the other panelists, to you Harina, to you Grace, and to you also again Jared, for tō whakai, tō hara mai, to kawe tēnei kaupapa to talk about food sovereignty. So I would like to give you over the rākau to you, Harina. No whea koe, ko ai koe, no reira, kei a koe te rākau.
Mana hau e te whānau, tēnā koe e te rangatira mō tō whakatūhera i tō tātou hui. Kia koe anō hoki e te rangatira mō tō kawe i a mātou ki tētahi wāhi pono, tētahi wāhi tūturu. Ka mihi a kia kui tuai wa hautai Eva Rickard, e noho ana ia ki oku whakaro i tēnei wā. I taku hau atu ki te kaupapa parakore anō hoki nā reira, ka kore wareware i tērā, i runga i te whenua o te kōpua. Engari, ko ai hau, ko Harina Rupapera tōku ingoa, he raukura no te aho matua, he raurenga no roto i te tikanga, no ngā whakapapa maha o te motu. Hoi anō kei te arawa hau, e tahu ana kei te arawa hau e mahi ana. Ka whātoro hoki ki te maha o aku hapu huri noa i te motu, engari kia kauau e takaroa ki te wā kōrero, e nui tōku aroha ki tōku whakapapa.
Ka pai tēnā koe Harina. Ka tukuna atu te tātātou whakawhanaunga ki a koe e te whanaunga rongo mai wahine, Grace, kei a koe te rākau. No hea koe, ko ai hoki koe, what's your region? Tēnā koe.
Kia ora. Ko no mahia mai tawhiti ahau, anō he ko rongo mawahine, he uri o rongo mawahine. Taku rohe mai ki morere nuhaka mahia right down to the Central Hawke's Bay is my mahi for parakore. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe, Grace. Tēnā hoki koe koutou o rongo mai wahine. Nō reira, ka huri atu i te tātātou tirohanga ki te nōta, ki hoki anga whakapau karakia. Kei a koe, Jared. Nō whea koe, ko ai hoki koe e hoa.
Tēnā tātou, tuatahi ka tuku ahau i taku aroha ki ngā toa Taiao huitahi nei kei arungi tēnei papa, tēnei Zoom, kia koe Harina, Grace, taku wai mari noho kei wanga nui au i ngā pokohiwi nui rawa o nei wahine toa, me koe hoki pine. Just big mihi to everyone here. So much respect and mihi for everything everyone is doing. Ko ai ahau, heuri ahau, no te waimana kāku, ko tānui te marae, taurana te awa, mauna pohatu te mauna, mā tātua te waka, tūhoi te iwi, so heuri ahau no te ure wera, nari, kei te noho ahau, kei te hiku o te ika, ienei rā, ki te taha o tōku wahine, me tōna whānau, and ko Jared here ki tā hau. Big mihi whānau, happy to be here, looking forward to having a kōrero with you all.
Tēnā koe, Jared, tēnā hoki koutou. It's good to have you all here today to join our panel and add to our kete kōrero. So we'll start off our panel with this question, the same one that was posed last week, which was, what are those experiences that that moulded you towards a relationship with the Taiao? So I'd like to hand that rākau again back to you, Harina, to share those experiences that lit your fire.
Oh, I'm on mute. I will share a photo that will probably maybe explain more than I can talk about it. But just before I do, so everyone watching is aware, I'm going to share a photo of a whale that has passed away. And there's quite a bit of graphic detail involved in that. And Nate. So, okay. For moku ake, it was 2018 and I was awakened by these whales that came in on our shores in Taranaki. I think our upbringing in Te Ahomatu and Kura Kaupapa Māori was definitely where the seed was planted and where a seed was nurtured, but didn't really adventure out into the mahi that we're doing, and didn't really, we sang about it, we do karakia about it, but I wasn't really hands-on until this experience. And so in 2018, we had 12 sperm whales come into our Taranaki coast, and I'm from Ngāti Tū, Ngāti Haua. They're both hapu of Ngā Rua Inerangi, so no Taranaki mau ngā hau. Kau poko nui a turi, tōku awa, ko tai kātu anō te tahi o kuawa. So it kind of started that way. I became a cultural whale harvester in that space, and I can't really articulate it in the English language, but they were my awakening. And so I started working alongside Papahori Parata from learning in that space. And then we had a couple of humpback whales. And so this is one of the whales in Poto, one of the most recent strandings, this whale that we're looking at here. Ko Tū Reirei Tera, I think. And so when the humpbacks came in, it was my opportunity to give back to Papahori and the crew from Ngāti Wai, who had come down to Taranaki to enlighten us and share the knowledge of cultural whale harvesting, because in Taranaki it's never been known that whales strand on the coast, and even the marine data will show you that there's never been a sperm whale strand there, as long as they've been monitoring the data. We don't have them in our waiata, not part of our narrative, so it was a real, very special and I think meant to be turn of the tides and call from Taiao. So after that, we had a couple of a couple of humpback whales. They were stranded up in Bailey's Beach, same year, 2018. And so from there, I got to go back and give back to the rōpū from our hapu for that they had brought to us. And that was like a whole nother level. So mo te Taiao, you know, enei karakia me enei waiata, tēnei oranga, te aho matua. So mo te Taiao, you know, enei karakia me enei waiata, tēnei oranga. Yeah, didn't really understand until those humpbacks came. So for me, my teachers have been the whales, as well as everyone else involved in harvesting. And during that same year was when I started working for Parakore. So I started learning about this kaupapa, and it's a very long story, but basically I give thanks and appreciation ko he mihi mutunga kore ki ngā prawa me ngā tohora, koera tōku whakaohonga.
Tēnā koe Harina, no reire e te kōkā, e te pakake, e te tohara moi maira. Go with the dreams of the iwi, back to them that wait for you, and rest easy. So I'd like to give you over to the rākau, Grace, to talk about what lit your fire towards the environment and to the taiao that you live in Te Māhia. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora whānau. So for me, it started when I was quite young, growing up in such a beautiful place on the coast. We had, when I was young, we were blessed to have a lot of our pakake still around with us, and practicing a lot of the tikanga that we are carrying out today still. For an example, harvesting kai, sharing kai, preserving kai, and things like that. All good stuff that we that seems to not happen as much as today as it was back then. We were lucky to be so close to the moana, so close that we spent a lot of time in the moana, a lot of time in the ngahere, and a lot of time in our mara with our pakeke. I grew up with the community. We lived everywhere, and we learnt many things from different whānau. I pay homage to to my nannies. They were kohanga reo founders in our area, and so we were able to go to kohanga at our marae, and we were there every day, growing up on our marae every day, and every weekend, because there was always something happening down there. There was just so many things happening at the time of growing up. And it was very real for us that our people were looking after Papatuanuku then, and Tangaroa, Hene Moana, and the ngahere constantly. It was always around us, so it was normal. It was normal to be harvesting food, sharing food, listening to stories and things like that. And then when we got to kohanga, it was just the same as it was when we were at home. And then when we got to school, we got sent to schools, and there was a few schools in Māhia. And my experience at school, and I'm very thankful for our teachers of the time, not at the time, because they knew they weren't the teachers. They always encouraged us to have Taiao our teacher first and foremost. So I remember being outside at school about 80% of the time, which is quite different to today, depending on what school you go to. So I'm lucky that our teachers at the time knew and acknowledged that our first teachers were nature, our second teachers were our whānau, our pakeke, our kaumatua, and things like and people like that. And then they were the last teachers, and they taught us the standard stuff that they had to do to keep the school going. For a school, we had our kaumatua as our teachers. They would come in often, and they would teach us. They would take us down to the beach. They would tell us all about the rules, the tikanga of both to do with the law and the LORE as well. So it was always around us, and it was a beautiful upbringing we had. Then I went away to college, to Martin and to Turakina Māori Girls College, and that was another blissful part of my life. And I did miss home, and but I actually found another cemented myself into another whānau, and kept me pono to Taiao and tikanga Māori as well. Then I came home and was able to, I was hungry because I have missed some of those things that I remember growing up as a child with. And because of that hunger, it created a curiosity with me that I wanted to know everything. And I felt like at that time that we had to be the people that were to carry on the tikanga of our old people that were dying. And so it came to me to really get stuck into the things I had learnt while I was at school at that age. My first connection with seeds was at a very young age. So we learned how to grow karingo, how to transplant karingo, how to grow mussels, how to grow, knew the life cycle of all our different animals and plants, food, kai, so that we knew how to look after them, and we knew how to grow them, and we knew how to multiply them, and very blessed that way. And which brings me to today, still continuing those practices of today, but now more so, and also encouraging more people to carry out those responsibilities that we have as kaitiaki, as people who look after the soil, papatuanuku, and making sure that she is cared for daily, like our grandparents did and parents did, and those people before. So that's what it's always been with me, to look after Taiao, and just now at a stage where need to share our mātauranga with not just our whānau, but a wider audience as well, who's also hungry for that to learn, to practice, and to pass on. Kia ora.
Me pēhe te whakaraupapa o kororo e te tuahine. I would have liked to have been in your kohanga. Kohanga wasn't around when I was your age on this, and so I'm really thankful for kohanga tamariki. They've got a good grounding, and you obviously had that grounding that's carried you through to what you've and lit the fire for your environment. So kia ora, Jared. So what made you become Mr. Mr. Look After the Taiao, I'm going to do my best. What was that thing that did that for you?
Yeah, well, I was brought up in town, you know, like pretty conventional urban upbringing by my mum mostly. Moved around, lived with my dad for a little while, moved in with my uncle for about 4 years and back to mum, and always urban. But we'll always go to the marae for tangihana and celebrations and that sort of thing. So I didn't really necessarily have any environmental role models who were kind of like guiding the way for me. But I remember my first interaction with the idea of like stewardship and kaitiakitanga it was probably through Captain Planet, the cartoon, and just all of the beautiful themes around the environment that came up in that cartoon. That was probably my first interactions. And then I had a cousin later on who's about 10 years older than me working in dock, James Barstow. He kind of took me under his wing a couple of times, took me hunting a bit, and I'd done a bit of mahi with him in the bush working for dock. And then during my university years, I carried on doing mahi for dock in my uni holidays. And then I sort of, as I got into my 20s, I just started becoming more and more critically aware of like how I was living and the impact that I was having on the world. And the tipping point was, I guess, when I realized that just by being born into this world, you are participating in the destruction of the whenua, of the moana, of our awa. And even if you wanted to, it's highly, it's very difficult to live a lifestyle in our modern life that actually is good for the environment. You have to really go out your way to live in a way that's actually regenerative of the environment. So, you know, that just kind of set off alarm bells in my head, and just started realizing how flawed our way of life is in the modern world. And sort of started pushing me more and more into environmental kaupapa. And when I started with parakore, that was a real accelerant of that journey. It really just pushed me along and put me in a space where I was you know, doing environmental education as my work, working with communities, talking about it, learning about it. And since then, many other things have happened, and kind of I'm more moving now into the growing space, growing kai, growing food sustainably, regeneratively, organically, and that's pretty much where I'm at now. Just going hard with that, and trying to grow as much kai as we can, source the majority of our diet from our kainga. We've got a long way to go, but we're moving there slowly. Yeah, so that's yeah. Mine wasn't a journey that started when I was like really young. It was one that just happened over time, and has led me to where I am today. And man, love living the environmental life, or trying to. It's a good buzz. So let's grow, whānau. Let's grow.
Yeah, tēnā koe, Jared. Awesome. So there was three different things that kind of lit the fire for our whānau. So I think it's time to go to our main question and get into the, you know, why we're here. And I'd like to give you the rākau to start it off with, Harina, to talk about what it is, this thing called Māori Food Sovereignty, what it means to you and your community.
Yeah, ngā mihi whānau, very inspired by my friends. E whakaiti ana, I was thinking when I was asked to be on a panel with these guys, I'm like, he tauhou tonu au. Aha koa I tupu I roto I te ao Māori, like Jared explains, it has been a journey since my birth, and everything I do is for my whakapapa. I was even born on the day my maunga erupted, well, you know, in memory of. But I still find relevance in those kind of things, meaning like specific dates and times and where we're placed for where we will serve, and through our work we can honour our whakapapa. So that's that's why I do everything I do. Definitely was awakened by the whales to understand deeper a deeper enlightenment of whakaaro nui and thinking, understanding how we are environment, and they're not just words or karakia. It was truly like a eye-opening to understand how we are our atua, and through that practice, while we're in that space, it really is atua space. Like we're working with, we're looking after our mate, we're honouring our tupuna, we're working with the sea, like the ocean, which is the biggest mass on earth. You know, the one, the hau, everything is looked at in a much different lens to just physical work. And so when we're harvesting and when I'm like using my knife on the whale, I'm actually cutting through layers of colonization and oppression, and just reclaiming a lot of our knowledge and a lot of the reasons why. So that's really where I was ignited to understand why I need to be doing more, and why I should, or why I was born for this. So Papahori Parata, he's one of the group of original Y262 claimants, and still, he was so inspiring from the time I met him, and he really introduced me to the real world of activism. We grew up in the te reo Māori fights, and you know, I didn't really understand a lot of the other things because we were so nurtured and sheltered in our upbringing. But yeah, he helped me understand a lot of things like the RMA, like Wakaputanga. And we did grow up knowing Te Tiriti o Waitangi, but to be honest, here in Taiao, we didn't feel the effects of colonisation like my whānau in Pariaka, or my whānau in Te Tai Tokerau, Tūhoe. You know, everyone's had a different journey, and but eventually we all link up, our whakapapas intertwined, and so we all have something to give, and mostly it's through understanding our histories. So that's why I do everything I do, because of that. So not just Te Arawa, but Motu Whanui, all the way back to Hawaii, and because I can. So in saying that is, I've been blessed to have great teachers, and when I moved into Parakore, I was just totally enlightened to where product of every day comes from. I actually didn't even think about those things, and so it changed my my decision making about consumerism, understanding waste minimization from a political space, like that. Those are the things that came with this mahi. It was it is a form of activism. Even just picking rubbish up, recycling, it's an action that you can actually do. You know, you're actually making a difference. There's no waiting involved, and it actually determines, it's up to your choice. So you make the choice, you do the action, and you know, that's that. So yeah, through the journey, I just met a lot of amazing people. It's quite interesting to the people who are cultural whale harvesters across the motu, actually like really awesome food growers. They've been in the game so long, fighting for their hapu and through the treaty claims, and they just love to share. So like we all love to share our knowledge that we learn and practice, and we understand how important it is that we do these things. Like the bro said, like Grace explained, we were intentionalized by our ancestors. They prayed for us, you know, they ikarakia rātou for us. They foresaw us coming along and changing the world. So yeah, all of that is like in my ngākau and whatu manua, whenever I'm doing like anything, the dishes, mowing the lawns, mahi whare wānanga, you know, kumara. So kumara is my passion that I've moved into. I've been in there for about 3 years. We're going on our 4th season. And so the waste minimization, yep, I started being able to do things that I didn't realize I could do. So, and so just working on those things. And then when I moved into the kumara space, I really understood something that our ancestors brought from Hawaii and something that is from Atua to the whenua, to the people, and full cycle. So it's irreversible. It's a continuous cycle. And we're very much involved in that. It's something that involves our kōrero tukuiho, our karakia, our way of life. So kumara cultivation is a way of life, but it even helps you understand of how much we need each other, you know, how much we rely on each other, like our kai, our mātauranga, and us as a people. So yeah, talking for a little bit too long, but koia, you know, ko kore au ki te kore au ki tūpuna nā reira, me mahi au i oku mahi, me whakapeto ngoi koia te take.
Nā koe Harina, mō kōrero mō tēnei āhuatanga o te sovereignty, me ona nei āhuatanga, e pēhi a tātou. On to you, Grace, with our kaupapa of the day with Māori Food Sovereignty. What does that mean for you and your community?
Oh, kia ora.
In 3 minutes.
Oh, yep, sweet. Okay. It means, first and foremost, taking care of Papa Tuanuku. If Papa Tuanuku is not looked after, if she is not replenished, if she is not recovering, if she is not well, we are not well. And so first and foremost, because I've only got 3 minutes, we need to look after her, because it's her where we get our nutrients from. It's her that we descend from, and all her other children that we call our atua, like Tangaro, where we get our other sustenance from, Tāne, where we get our rākau from. So if we look after her, and she is, we've seen tohu, we've known these tohu for quite some generations now of the hurt that we've created. We need to work with Papa Tuanuku. So we need to focus on food for our people. If we're not growing our own food, we're not caring for her. We're not practicing those things that we need to practice to care for her. We need to make our decisions, make huge decisions locally on what we want to do. And if each area does their thing in their own rohe for looking after Papa Tuanuku, collectively will make a difference. We need to value our organic food as well, that's farmed and produced within our community. We need to build our food sovereignty, builds our knowledge and our skill base of who we are and who we're to become, by practicing those awesome techniques that our tipuna had. Practicing and living ancestral wisdom is a must, and bringing that ancestral wisdom forward with us to the next wherever we're going. Having localized food systems in place, like growing your own food, put a seed in the ground. Don't get too caught up on the moon phases and everything. That comes later on. Put the seed in the ground and watch it grow, and that will tell you, that's your first teacher, that will tell you what's happening with the environment, and just adjust things as you go on and learn. And it's just so important to work with nature. I can't stress that anymore. As we all know, we need to work with nature. One thing that's huge I think, within our country, we need to have an Indigenous seed bank for all our seeds, including our seed in the moana as well. Setting up little community seed banks, and then whānau seed banks, get us growing. Our responsibility should be to look after Papa Tuanuku, look after our Taiao, and it's simple how to do that, just small steps take small steps, and will go a long way. Yeah, but is that 3 minutes? I can go on for 3 years.
Yeah, I know you can, Grace, and I'm sure, there's lots of fun out there going, get rid of that guy and let Grace just go for it. But what I'd like to do is pass it on to Jared and put his footstep into it, because and then we'll see what our time is looking like, and if we feel like going on, we'll just carry on. I reckon if that's if our producer gives us we'll carry on, if that's okay. Kia ora, Jared. Food sovereignty, what is that for you?
Hi, ka pai. Patai nui, bit of a hot topic at the moment. But yeah, I guess for me, when I think about Māori food sovereignty, it makes me think, what's the difference between food sovereignty and Māori food sovereignty? And when I think about what food sovereignty means, it basically means the ability to have control over where your food comes from and the processes involved in its creation. That's real simplistic. It's obviously way deeper than that, but that's a simple explanation. Now, to explain my whakaaro about what Māori food sovereignty is and how it's different, I'm going to refer to some of the stories that my whānau have told me. So when I was growing up, my uncles told me stories about the amazingly abundant large gardens that my nan and koro grew every year. Huge gardens. They hosted multiple generations at a time, children, adults, and grandparents. And everyone played a role in the mara, and everyone was involved in tending to the dozens of pigs and chickens as well. Karakia were just as much a part of gardening as was watering and weeding. And this imbued the mara with vitality and payment of gratitude. Each household within the wider hapu grew gardens to sustain their own family. Often, an additional big mara was also grown, and this mara was especially dedicated to contributing towards occasions such as tangihana on the marae or other significant celebrations. And for these big mara, the different whānau of the hapu, of the wider hapu, would come together to support each other when the manpower was needed on planting and harvesting days. So it was kind of like a house hopping working bee or a cooperative or CSA or something like that. And when I think about those stories, for me, this begins to paint a picture of what a Māori food system, what Māori food sovereignty looks like. It's whānau hapu level food production that provides nutritional sustenance for its members, but also as an essential byproduct of its activities, naturally embodies tikanga Māori as well. So whanauna tana coming together to help each other, kotahi tana collectively contributing to a cause that benefits the greater good of the community, a manaakitanga, a growing kai that will enhance a marai's ability to express hospitality toward their manuhiri, and tikanga, inciting karakia or traditional incantations over the gardens to pay respects to atua, and increasing the likelihood of a favourable outcome. So these ideas and this vision that I've just sort of explained that was from like the 50s, 60s and 70s when my uncles and my parents' generation were growing up, and it all looked a bit different now, like times are way different. But I think for me, a Māori food sovereignty as an essential part of essential aspect of its activities is tikanga Māori and Māori values. And then the growing the kai is like, that's also an essential part of it. But yeah, for me, that's how I like to look at it and how it's different to just food sovereignty in general.
Kia ora, Jared. So as we build our kete kōrero for what is this thing, food sovereignty, I'd like to offer our panelists another round of adding to our kete. So I'll give you our kete Harina.
Ka poto ake te kakau o te hoi. I read the pātai about the rangatahi, so I'm just going to quickly show this picture and talk to the picture. Ko tēnei. Can you see the picture? How do we engage our rangatahi? Yep, that's a question being asked across the motu. In Te Arawa, we've founded this kaupapa, it's called Te Arawa Taiao Hitoa, and it engages our young leaders, wao rangatahi, into learning their pepeha through doing, so more walking the talk, and we learn who we are, where we come from, and what we're responsible for, and then we learn biosecurity skills and practices that enable us to contribute back to our Taiao. We have found them to be very enjoyable. The rangatahi themselves love the wānanga, love giving back, and actually it's really practical. So even if somebody came to the wānanga who didn't know anything about where they're from in that hapu o iwi, by the time they leave, they have learned that and they've already contributed. We basically contribute straight away. And we do kumara, and you have to make it enjoyable and kind of exciting, innovate as well through science and technology, any kind of education to help them understand te ao tawhito. You don't actually only have to go way back into the ways of our tupuna, the way they did things. It's more about the thinking, and if you can engage their thinking and then have them innovate the thinking, they're quite creative and they find all sorts of ways to contribute back into their whakapapa. Because the long days in the mara, kind of, you hear a lot of stories about people who were made to be in the mara and it wasn't very enjoyable. There wasn't a lot of back then we had to do those things. These days they don't. You can just go to pack and save, and like we've really lost the sovereignty there. And that some rangatahi actually do think that food comes in packets, and you know, the stuff you get at pack and save, like that's actually where they're from. So for me, the sovereignty is actually in the mātauranga, in the knowing why and where things come from. So that's just one thing to engage the rangatahi.
Goodbye. Kia ora Harina, and on back to you, Grace.
Yep, cool. Yeah, talking about rangatahi, how do we excite them? First of all, we've got to know, how do they get excited? We need to ask them, how do you get excited? What actually are the triggers that trigger your mind to stick with something? I experienced that when I was quite young, because we were always asked, you know, what makes you enjoy something, and we would come up with that ourselves. So first of all, depending, because every rangatahi is different depending on what age they are, what's happening in their lives, and things like that. So you've got to be able to cater to their needs. It could be I'm just really hungry, you know, or I'm missing somebody, so they're actually in a pining state. So we need to, some things that we can do with them that'll excite them is take them to a place that makes them happy. Ask them, what is your happy place? And if it's the moana, let's take them there. Take them to the moana. If it's the ngahere, take them to the ngahere. And those manu, those leaves, all the rākau will excite them. And then you might just have to point them into some other directions, like, oh, did you notice that over there? You know, that rākau is ready to fall. I wonder what it's going to fall on. You know, and then they look and they're, oh, yeah. And then before you know it, they're down there and then they're looking at the river. The thing is, you don't know what you don't know. So we've also got to help them learn some things as well. So like we look at soil differently. Those that work with the soil daily, we know what's in it, but other people may not know what's in it. They just see dirt. And so we open it up and go, oh, look, this thing here and this na in here, this is what it does, and this is what it needs, and this is what, and then that's what excites them. It's usually the small things that make a huge difference. So taking them to those small things in those big places and sharing as much mātauranga as you can with them really, really excites our rangatahi. And like Harina said, you know, they just take it to another level. They're very creative, they're very innovative, and they will take it to a whole nother level where they feel connected. But first of all, we've got to connect them there first, take them to those places, and then that excites them. Take them out of the boring classroom box area and get them out there, because that's what excites them. That's what excites us culturally, is hands-on. Yeah, ka pai.
Tēnā koe, Grace. Nō reira kea, koe Jared, it's to let's bring those two kaupapa together with our Māori Food Sovereignty. How do we excite our rangatahi towards that, our goal of food sovereignty?
Ai, he wero nui tērā I roto I nā huatano ēnei rā. I think these days it's especially challenging to engage rangatahi with growing kai due to, you know, the current circumstances of the way our rangatahi are growing up with extreme convenience, and the example that's being set for them by all of us who are chained to going to the supermarket to supply our food because we're time poor, but we are working and we got money, so we spend that money at the grocery store. You know, that's the way society is at the moment, and that's not to accuse anyone or say that anyone's doing the wrong thing. It just is what it is. But I think I guess if I take my son as an example, he's 2.5 years old now, and he sees me like walking around with a machete sometimes, and I'm going around and I'm like pruning back some bushes, and I'm like got these big pine melons that we grow and we feed to our pigs, and he'll come over. He's got his own little wooden machete, and he'll come over and he'll get down with me and start chopping up our pine melons, and then he'll go and feed them to the pigs. And he's out there like I might be like sowing a cover crop of mixed seeds, and I got my bucket of seeds and I'm out there just sowing it, you know, and then he's next to me behind me and he's got his own little bucket and he's grabbing it and he's doing the same thing as me. And he's out in the garden and he's like picking fruits and stuff like that. And, you know, for me, like I've had to do a lot of courses and learn lots online to like, and pay money to actually like learn and do all of these and to like figure out how to grow food. Whereas for him, it's just going to be intuitive and instinctual because that's just how he's grown up. And the way he's growing up, you know, it's like, it's kind of, maybe you know, he's lucky to be growing up like that is what I'm trying to say. And not many kids get to grow up that way. But I think the more that we as pakeke, as mātua, we normalise growing food, even if it's on a small scale, and the more that we involve our kids from a really young age, the more that they're likely to get excited about it throughout the rest of their childhood. Yeah, and I think like in a way it's you know, like it's up to us as whānau, but it's also up to the government, the school curriculum to create some systemic change to incorporate food resilience into our children's upbringings through education, because we can only do so much on the ground level. You're on mute, Pine.
So did you all get that? So time is, yeah, we're into overtime now, and we've had some awesome kōrero that's talked about our kaupapa food sovereignty, and also we've started to address the working with rangatahi and young ones. But to wind up our panel today, what I'd like to offer is that our panelists give their best tip for food sovereignty in your home. So what is the best tip that you can give that supports food sovereignty in your home? Kia ora, Harina. Mau te kōrero.
Well, in answer to the question of how whānau that are living week to week or time poor, care for papa tuanuku, like a tip is actually in your decision making, in the consumerism side of things. Yeah, it isn't easy, but basically a tip of mine that I will share is that I just don't buy it. So if I know that it's not good for papa tuanuku as much as I want it, I just don't, because of the principle. So it does take a little bit of work, I guess, but that's an ultimate tip. If you're like, you don't have any time to give papa tuanuku, but you know, you buy food, you buy your kai or whatnot. One tip is if plastic, if you have to, if it's not one or two, then just don't.
Ka pai. Good tip there, Harina. On to you, Grace, the super tip for food sovereignty in Te Māhia.
Okay, I just want to address the question as well, like Harina too, and just to add there is that addressing time poor, yeah, it's that decision. You need to make a decision on what you've got to, on what you want to do. And that being, there are certain ways that you can find, just working on in your daily life, how can you become time rich instead of time poor? Look at it, how can I become time rich? And then your mind will start moving towards ways of how can I be time rich to grow these things. All you need is a handful of soil if you want to grow something. Grow one thing in a handful of soil. You can grow it anywhere. You can grow it in a box. You can grow it in a container. You can do that if that's what you want. But how to care for papa tuanuku, you can start off by just doing like a small karakia in any language you like, that whatever connects you to papa tuanuku, you can start with a karakia. And you're caring for papa tuanuku in some way. That is a good start. And if you want to know more ways on how you can become time rich and care for papa tuanuku, just message us anytime and we'll give you heaps more tips, because we've only got a little bit of time. But my little tip for today is start today. Just start today. Start doing something today. Start changing your mind. Start thinking on, is this good for me? Is this good for papa tuanuku? Is what I'm going to do now good for papa tuanuku? Is it good for me? Because if it's good for papa tuanuku, it's good for me. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe. Yes, Jared. So what's your tip for Māori food sovereignty, linked with making more time for our whānau out there?
Yeah, I guess starting with whānau, many families in New Zealand and across the world being time poor and being tied into a system that gives them no access to growing kai. A lot of people, a lot of whānau are locked into that system from a very young age, born into it and carry it on. And you know, like it's just another one of those things. It is what it is, and no resentment or anything towards any whānau doing that. They're just trying to get by with what they know. Yeah, I think like one way I think of motivating whānau to spend more of their time looking after papatuanuku is by experiencing living examples of whānau who are doing that already. I know certainly for myself, there's been a couple of whānau who have had a really big influence on my life in terms of me being able to experience how beautiful and abundant and alive the food systems that they've been able to create. That's been hugely inspiring for me. And I'm talking about Permadynamics is one that's a whānau in Matapodi who just have an amazing food system, food forests, gardens and everything. Koanga Institute is another one that's really inspired me. And also there's Gail and John Aiken here in Hokianga. But I've been really fortunate to visit those beautiful examples and to be inspired by them, which has led to my own actions. But we need more Māori examples of whānau who are like just pumping it, cranking it, just have thriving, abundant food systems going on for themselves, for their wider whānau, for their marae, whatever it is. And there are a few out there, but we just need more of them so that whānau can go and see it, be inspired, and hopefully go away and start trying things. But my top tip is just support local as possible. You know, if you can afford to, buy some local kai, buy locally made things, and buy things that don't have any synthetic materials in them.
Kia ora, Jared. Whānau, nei rā te mihi ki a koutou, nā toki o tēnei kaupapa, Māori Food Sovereignty. To all you out there in your kāinga that have just have been part of a massive panel around our kaupapa. Thank you for joining us. Nō reira, ka tukuna atu ngā mihi kia Harina, rātou ko Grace, ko Jared, ki te kore, mai kore rātou, kore tā tātou kaupapa I tū I te rānei, nō reira, tēnā koutou. So with food sovereignty means, when we are food sovereign, it means that we are reducing our footprint on papatuanuku. We're reducing carbon, we're reducing emissions, and that is the offside, the bonus of this kaupapa that we've talked about today. What I'd like to share with you is next week's panel, and our kaupapa next week is about how do we raise our next generation of Taiao warriors. What we've had today is this generation of Taiao warriors, and they are out there motivating the next reanga. So join us next Tuesday, same time, same channel, Parakuri Live at 3 p.m. Again for how do we raise our next generation of Taiao warriors. Nō reira, hei whakakapi tā tātou rā, unihia, te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te wairua, te tinana I te arataka tū, koira e rongo whakairi ake, tūturu whakamaua kia tīna, hau me hui e, tai ki e.
Tai ki e.
Kia ora mai tātou, a tērā wiki.
Tēnā tātou.
Te whānau.
Next week whānau.